Good morning. It is Thursday, April 2nd, here today with this week's last social psychology lecture. The question of the day is, what is recovering from PTSD strongly related to? Um, there are different things that help people recover, but with PTSD, they have one thing that seems to be strongly related to recovery. Okay. Um, Going to try to finish up today with this chapter. We're going to start off with extreme stress today and a couple questions for you. What is post-traumatic stress disorder? If we were in the classroom, I'd have you answer that. The other question is, what kinds of events are most likely to trigger it? Okay, so two questions about PTSD. So extreme stress has a variety of sources ranging from unemployment to wartime conflict, from violent natural disaster to rape. Extreme stress marks a radical departure from everyday life, such that a person cannot carry on as before, and in some cases never fully recovers. Okay. Now there are different things we're going to look at. We're going to look at unemployment and underemployment, divorce and separation, bereavement, catastrophes, and then combat and other threatening personal attacks. Okay. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about PTSD and be wrapping up this chapter. Okay, so when the jobless rate rises, so do first admissions to psychiatric hospitals, infant mortality, deaths from heart disease, alcohol-related disease, and suicide. All those things rise as unemployment rises. Okay, and there's quite a few guys that have done studies on this. Things just fall apart. One worker said after both he and his wife lost their jobs, people usually react to stress of unemployment in several stages. First comes a period of relaxation and relief in which they take a vacation of sorts, confident that they will find another job. Okay, so maybe you're relieved. You've lost your job and you go, okay, look, I got a little time to myself. Maybe I got unemployment coming in. I got a severance package, whatever, and you relax a little bit. Okay. The second stage is marked by continued optimism. It is a time of concentrated job hunting. Stage 3 comes in, a period of vilification and doubt. Jobless people become moody. Their relationships with family and friends deteriorate, and they scarcely bother to look for work. It's getting pretty desperate. And that's not in the first couple of weeks. That's after a while. It takes a little time to get there. Stage 4, a period of malice and cynicism. They have simply given up. Although these effects are not universal, they are quite common. Moreover, they are indicators that joblessness may not so much create new psychological difficulties, but bring previously hidden ones to the surface. Studies have shown that death rates go up, psychiatric symptoms worsen, not just during periods of unemployment, but also during short, rapid upturns in the economy. Okay, so it can trigger things. Maybe if in your past you've had depressive episodes and now you're out of job and you've gone through the first few weeks and all of a sudden you're into maybe the second or third month of not being able to find a job and start worrying about how long is unemployment going to last? How long am I going to get these benefits? Well, then all of a sudden these depressive episodes start coming back. Okay. You had handled them well while you were working, everything was going well, but now all of a sudden you have problems. Okay. Divorce and separation is the next thing that the book brings up. Coleman and colleagues in 1987 observed the deterioration or ending of an intimate relationship as one of the more potent of stressors and one of the more frequent reasons why people seek psychotherapy. After a breakup, both partners often feel they have failed at one of life's most important endeavors. Strong emotional ties frequently continue to bind the pair. For married couples, if only one spouse wants to end the marriage, the one initiating divorce may feel sadness and guilt at hurting the once loved partner, and the rejected spouse may vacillate between anger, humiliation, and self-recrimination over his or her role at the failure. Now, remember, we talked earlier in this chapter that sometimes in a divorce, there's more stress leading up to the actual divorce than there is the actual divorce when the papers are finally signed and taken to court and it's over with. Okay. But a lot of times that stress of the divorce may last for a while for the one who really wasn't looking for the divorce. Okay. Let's say your spouse decides that it's over and they don't want to be married anymore for whatever reason. And next thing you know, you're filing for divorce and child custody and all this stuff. The one who did the filing, once it's said and done, may see some measure of relief, but the war can be there for a while. Okay. Even if the decision to separate was mutual, ambivalent feelings of love and hate can make life upsetting and turbulent. Adults are not the only ones who are stressed by divorce. A national survey of the impact of divorce on children found that the majority suffer intense emotional stress at the time of divorce. Although most recover within a year or two, especially if the custodial parent establishes a stable home and their parents do not fight about the child's rearing, a minority experience long-term problems. So it even affects the children. You know, there's been cases where people stay together because of the kids, and then once the kids are out and on their own, then that's when you see divorces for older adults happen. Okay. The majority of divorce that happen within the first 5 years of a marriage. When kids are involved, it changes a little bit. Okay. So things can happen, but that stress is still going to be there and can be there for the kids. Some of you may come from a family where was divorced and you may have experienced some of that stress. You know, you can kind of think back and reflect on how you felt when that happened and how you handled the situation. Who was there for you? Was there that other adult outside your family that was there for you? We've established how a strong support system helps people overcome stressful situations and helps them get past some of those events that have caused that extra stress. So a strong support system is a good thing to have to help you get through stressful situations. Okay. Bereavement. Bereavement means if someone passes away. Most of you probably know that, but I thought I'd throw that out there just to make sure. I know it's going to mention as I go through these notes, but just thought I'd throw that out there. For decades, it's widely held that following the death of a loved one, people go through a necessary period of intense grief, during which they work through their loss and about a year later pick up and go on with their lives. But Wortman and others have challenged this view on their basis of their own research with reviews of literature on loss. So they did this study in 2000 and also in 1998. According to Wortman, the first myth about bereavement is that people should be intensely distressed when loved one dies, which suggests that people who are not devastated are behaving abnormally or perhaps pathologically. Often, however, people have prepared for the loss and said their goodbyes and feel little remorse or regret. Indeed, they may be relieved that their loved one is no longer suffering. The second myth, that people need to work through their grief, may lead family, friends, and even physicians to consciously or unconsciously encourage the bereaved to feel or act distraught. Moreover, physicians may deny those mourners who have deeply disturbed needed anxiety and antidepressant medications for their own good. The third myth holds that people who find the meaning of death, who come to a spiritual or essential understanding of why it happened, cope better than those who do not. In all reality, people who do not seek greater understanding are the best adjusted and least depressed. If you've made terms with it and you know it's going to happen, it doesn't make it any easier. But making terms with it and understanding that it's going to happen might reduce some of those stress factors. I think back to when my mom passed away. I don't remember it being stressful. I do remember the days of her passing and the visitation and the funeral being emotionally draining. But I also know that because we had been dealing with her cancer diagnosis for 18 months, and when we were first told that she would be lucky if she had 6 months, having 18, 19 months seemed as a blessing to us. And I think we had come to terms that it was going to happen. We just didn't know when, and it doesn't mean that it was any easier. It just means that maybe it wasn't as stressful for us as it would have been if it had been something sudden that we had no preparation for. Okay, so I just kind of go along with what they're saying here, that those who are prepared, who don't try to get that greater understanding, may end up being less depressed. Now, there's a fourth myth that people should recover from a loss within a year or so. It is perhaps the most damaging. Parents trying to cope with the death of an infant and adults whose spouse or child died suddenly in a vehicle accident continue to experience painful memories and wrestle with depression years later. But because they have not recovered on schedule, members of their social networking may become unsympathetic. Hence, the people who need support most may hide their feelings because they do not want to make other people uncomfortable and fail to seek treatment because they too believe they should have recovered on their own. Now, not all psychologists agree with that view. Okay, most agree that research on loss must take into account individual, group, or cultural differences, as well as variations in the circumstances surrounding the loss. It's different for different people. I may not have been as stressed or depressed after the loss of my mom as maybe my brother or sister were. I know my sister took it pretty hard. Her and my mom were very, very close, and spoke to each other a lot, saw each other a lot because she lived closer. And it made it even harder for her. So I don't know. I guess really the studies are out there. If you've experienced a loss or you know someone who has, the best advice I can give you is be there for them when they need you. That's about the only advice I can give. Help them through, be that good support system for them, okay? The next thing the book talks about is catastrophes, and we're talking about floods, earthquakes, violent storms, fires, plane crashes. 9/11 was a violent catastrophe. Hurricane Katrina, a violent catastrophe. Right now, looking at this virus as COVID-19 can end up being a violent catastrophe. Look at how our lives have been upheaved because of this virus. We're sitting right now trying to conduct class over YouTube. When I went back to school, I never dreamed, and they can't prepare you for this. There was not one class I took that we discussed what happens if schools close down and you have to teach from your home over the internet. Never was discussed. Never took a class like that. Check with any of your teachers. Nobody ever took a class that brought this up. So this can be considered a catastrophe. How are we going to handle the extra stress that goes along with this catastrophe? How are we going to handle people who might run through bouts of depression because of this? Because let's face it, we all probably know someone who could be experiencing depressive tendencies. It could be a person that you sit next to in class that you never would have guessed would be depressed, but under these circumstances that we're in right now, are depressed. And it's got to be extremely tough. I mean, it's tough enough for my wife and I sitting here. Our two of our children live in Effingham, and two of our grandkids are in Effingham, and we can't see them, much less get to see the ones who live here in Charleston. Now, we have FaceTime, which makes it a little bit better because every other day or so we can go on FaceTime and see them and talk to them and watch and see what they're doing. And we got technology that they can send us pictures of what they're doing and stuff, but it's tough. So these catastrophes can really disrupt our lives, okay? At first, in the shock stage, the victim is stunned, dazed, and apathetic, sometimes even disoriented for the traumatic event. Then the suggestible stage, victims become passive and quite ready to do whatever researchers tell them to do, okay? In the third phase, the recovery stage, victims remain emotionally balanced, but anxiety often persists, and they need to recount their experiences over and over again. When this is all said and done, how much is this going to be talked about? What you did, how you got through this time, okay? All these things are going to pop up. And honestly, even though this doesn't seem like much, and I've been told that when this is over, if it looked like we reacted, then we probably did the right thing. I don't know. I don't know what the answers are. I have never experienced anything like this. Contrary to popular belief, I wasn't around in 1918 when they had the last big pandemic and states and areas shut down. So I don't know how this is going to play out. But this could be considered a catastrophe and could be something that psychologists will look back at sometime in the future and do studies. And they may be doing studies right now trying to figure out how people are handling this and how people are reacting to this. Okay. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out later on, and especially in the psychology and looking at how that handles it. Okay. The last thing in this part is combat and other threatening personal attacks. Now, wartime experiences often create soldiers intense and disabling combat stress that persists long after they have left the battlefield. Similar reactions, including bursting into rage over harmless remarks, sleep disturbances, cringing at sudden loud noises, psychological confusion, uncontrollable crying, and silently staring into space for long periods of time. All these things can happen. Also seen in survivors of serious accidents, especially in children, and of violent crimes such as rapes and muggings. Figure 12.3 shows the traumatic effects of war on the civilian population based upon the composite statistics obtained after recent civil wars. And right now, you hear some people saying that we're at a war. We're at a war against a virus. Some people call it the unseen enemy. Some people call it call for battle cries. What do we need to do? What can we do to fight this? So there could be some stress over this. It kind of falls in these last two categories pretty well. This leads us into post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Severely stressful events can cause a psychological disorder known as post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Dramatic nightmares in which the victim re-experiences the terrifying event as it actually happened are common. Daytime flashbacks, the victims will relive the trauma. Often victims of PTSD withdraw from social life, from job and family responsibilities. Post-traumatic stress disorder can set in immediately after a traumatic event or within a short time. Sometimes months or years go by before the victim is able to recover from the experience. We have seen it in a lot of our soldiers who have gone off to fight here more recently in Afghanistan and Iraq. They have come back. They suffer from PTSD. They have nightmares. They have loud noises scare them, bring back flashbacks and memories. Okay, so all these things are part of PTSD. The experiences of soldiers who fought in the Gulf War, the Korean War, and especially the Vietnam War heightened interest in PTSD. More than 1/3 of men involved in heavy combat in Vietnam showed severe symptoms of this disorder. Even some veterans of relatively short Gulf War in 1991 experienced PTSD. Many veterans of World War II who are old men now still have nightmares from which they are awakening sweats and shaking. Now, there's not very many World War II veterans left. My father-in-law is in his 90s, and he was in World War II. Fortunately for him, he was put on an island someplace in the Pacific and worked on airplanes, repaired airplanes that came in. So I don't know how much combat he actually had, but there are still a few left. And according to this, some of them still might have some of these nightmares and stuff. Okay. Now, soldiers aren't the only victims of war. During the 20th century, civilian deaths outnumber military deaths in most wars. Yet in the last decade, especially following the tragedy of September 11th attacks, the medical researchers have begun to investigate the psychological and physical effects of war and terrorism on civilians. So not only could soldiers have it, but those traumatic events. That's why it's post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, it's common in veterans who have seen combat, but now we're starting to see that it also happens to just regular civilians during terrorist attacks. I think it could be during this time, we might see some people who experienced the extremes of this virus may end up with PTSD. That we'll have to find out. We'll just have to see how that plays out. Okay, that's going to kind of end us here. That finishes up this chapter. What I'm going to do is I will host the study guide out on the Teams app later today. I won't make it due until next Wednesday. So you'll have tomorrow. There won't be a video. Tomorrow is considered an institute day where teachers are going to collaborate and try to see how we're going to proceed from here out for the rest of the month. So I won't be coming on. There won't be a question of the day. You'll have time to go back and finish up any work that you haven't done and get that done. Again, I want to let you know that if you are missing tests or need to make up something, email me and I'll see what I can send you to help you get caught back up. Okay, I'll use email as tutorial time. All right. But I'll get that study guide out and give you until Wednesday. And then Wednesday when I come on, now I may have a message Monday and Tuesday, but Wednesday when I come on, Wednesday will be strictly a review going through the study guide. You can compare your answers. By Wednesday evening, you'll need to submit that study guide through the Teams app, and then I'll give you a grade for that. I'll give you a point for every question that you answer. Okay, for a maximum of, I don't know, probably 25 points if there's 50 questions. I guess it'll be 50 points for 50 questions. Okay, but I'll do that for you working on it. All right, and then we'll see where we go from there. I would like to get it set up for you to be able to watch A Beautiful Mind, but I know that may be difficult for some of you. Some of you have reached out and let me know that you can watch it. Some of you haven't. We need to get this out, and I'm going to send out a mass email to individual classes this week to let you know that we're going to be setting up to get this done and try to get Beautiful Mind in. I think it's good. If not, we may do it if we get back in May. I may just wait and do it in May and be part of what we do in May and postpone the next chapter until we get done with a Beautiful Mind. Okay. Stay safe. Take care of yourselves. Spend time with your families. Try not to be too stressful through these situations. If you're feeling stressed, feeling depressed, reach out to someone. Find someone to talk to. If you need to email me, email me. If it comes down that you need to call me, you email me and tell me you'd like to talk. I'll give you my phone number and I'll have you call me and we'll sit and talk. And when I say we'll sit and talk, I'll listen and I'll let you talk. I'm not going to claim to have all the answers. Lord knows I don't have that. But if you need to talk to somebody, I'll be here for you. Okay? Stay safe, and I'll be back again on Monday.